Okay, welcome to part one. This is going to be our setup and our planning phase. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting up our tools. We're going to be making sure that we have everything we need to get started. And then we are going to come up with the plan. And that is the process of creating the files that Claude needs to build this application for us. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the tools that I've got installed that I'm going to be using throughout the video. So obviously I'm using Claude Code as the IDE of choice, or the tool of choice. That's my vibe coding tool. I'm using Claude Desktop because I like to plan with Claude Desktop, so I use Claude Code to actually do the coding, and then I use Claude Desktop to help me write the plan. So in this case today, we're going to be using majority of Claude 4.5 Sonnet. We're going to use a little of Opus if we get into trouble with Sonnet. And then at the very end, when we're doing refinement, we're going to be using 4.5 Haiku, which is actually really good for fast things that you need to do. So we're going to have Claude Code writing the code for us. Claude Desktop is going to help us with the planning. We're going to use Visual Studio Code so that you can just kind of watch it and I can talk through things as it's happening. I've got a text editor I like to use called BBEdit. It's pretty much unnecessary with Visual Studio Code, but it's going to show up on the screen, so I want to make sure you saw it. And then we're going to be using Git. And then you could be using Git or you could be using GitHub. Now, one really important thing is that you use Git. Git is a version control software. Claude makes a lot of mistakes. And there are going to be times that you're just going to say, hey, I need to go back a couple steps. And so it's important that you use Git. So in our first step, what we're going to do is we're going to build out the Git repository. So we're going to create a Git repository for our project.
So I'm going to start in Chrome.
And then we're going to install it. And then that's going to
go in here and I'm going to create a new repository.
So as part of our process,
this is where I just
every occasionally
time we make
pop in to
changes,
explain
we're
what we're
going to
doing.
post
So what
them
we're
to
doing
Git.
here is we're
So our
creating
first step
a
is
Git
going to be
repository.
creating
And the
the Git
reason for
repository.
that is
So let's get
we
started
want to
on that.
make sure that we have version control, because Claude Code makes a lot of mistakes. And there are going to be times that through the process you get to a situation where you're like, okay, this code just isn't working. Let's go back 3 or 4 steps. So what we're doing is we're setting up a Git repository, and then we're going to take that Git repository, we're going to install it locally, and then that way, every time we make changes to our application, we can have Claude Code push it to Git, and then if we run into any problems, we can always go back and get an older version of the code.
And then this one is going to be called YouTube SaaS Project. And then I am going to initialize the repository. I'm going to make it an Apache 2 license, and then I'm going to create the repository. So now I have a new repository called YouTube SaaS Project, and this is where we're going to start. Now I'm going to go here, and I'm going to hit copy the URL. Then I'm going to come over here to my terminal. So let me clear. Okay, so I have a blank terminal. I'm in my root, and now I'm going to do a git clone. And I'm going to create my new directory called YouTube SaaS Project. And the reason for this is one of the key things I do in all of my coding with Claude Code is make sure that every time Claude does something somewhat complicated or adds a new feature or does something, it pushes it to Git. Because there are times that Claude is going to make a mistake, or there is times you're going to give it some prompts that you're going to regret and you're going to want to go back. So I make this part of the automated process. So now I have a new directory, and I'm going to cd into it. Now, by the way, I got here by going to my terminal. Okay, so I'm in my terminal, and I am in my YouTube SaaS project. So if I do an ls, now you see all I've got is the license file and the README file. So one thing I'm going to do to get my project started is I'm going to do a make dir of an HTML file. Now this HTML file is going to be the root of Apache. So when I run this, and if I wanted to deploy this on something like GoDaddy, it's going to be the root of Apache. So it might be htdocs, it might be var www HTML, depending on the version of Linux you're using. But this is going to be my directory for my file system. So now what I want to do is I want to set this up with a product called MAMP. And what MAMP is it is a local LAMP stack, and this is what I'm going to develop this project in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into MAMP, and I have a video on how to install this. Now, under my preferences, it shows my document root being users at honor HTML. I want to change that, and I want to make it where I'm working. So this is going to be my directory that I'm currently doing. So now I have a directory called YouTube SaaS Project. Oops. Do this again. So I have YouTube SaaS Project and then HTML. Okay, so this is my home directory. So I hit OK. Now it is going to restart my browser, making this directory the home directory. So it shows that my document root is at my new project that I've created. Now one thing I want to do is I want to go over here to MySQL, and I want to bring up MySQL PHP MyAdmin. And we'll get to why I'm doing this in a little bit, but as you see, I've now got my environment. So I've got a local LAMP stack running and PHP MyAdmin, so I can edit my database because we're going to be building a database application here. Okay, so at this point, we've got our development environment set up. We have Claude Code installed, we have Claude Desktop, and we've created a Git repository that we're going to use to save our progress and use our version control. So at this point, we're ready to get started, and now we're going to get started building out the requirements documents, which include 4 main files that Claude Code is going to need. So hit subscribe and like just to do me a favor and help me out with the algorithm, and then we're going to get on to the next step, which is going to be defining the project and setting up what we need in order to do the build.